really enjoyed the worship service so far. Marcia and I are away this Sunday, but we'll be back with you next weekend. I want to introduce to you some very special people in my life. I want to first talk about Jim and Liz Fitzgerald. When I felt called into ministry, I left my business job, and Marcia did the same, and we moved out to Kansas City for me to go to seminary. And we had just really been involved in our local church back in our hometown. I had no idea about the Greater Nazarene Church, and I surely didn't know anybody at the seminary. And we showed up to go to school, and this couple, Jim and Liz, out of the kindness of their own heart, took us in as friends. And he was in his last year, I was in my first year, but we became close friends. We had our kids the same. We had 3 boys, they had 3 girls. And they've just been special friends through the years, kind of the friends that if it's been months or even years, you just pick right back up when you see each other because you have a deep connection within each of us. And that's the way it's been with Jim and Liz. Jim's going to help us celebrate communion at the end of the service, but I want to introduce to you one of their daughters. They had 3 daughters, and their youngest daughter has just been a recent graduate of Trevecca. She's just recently gotten married. A lot has changed in her life, but she's going to talk about that in just a little bit. I just want to tell you that I've come to know her over her time here in Nashville, and she's a caring, compassionate, and called person. And I want her to be able to share from God's word and also to share about what God's doing in her life. So Jim's going to help us with communion in just a little bit of time. But I want you to extend a generous welcome to Anna Fitzgerald Peters as she comes to speak to us about what God's doing in her life. Would you welcome her right now, if you would? Thank you very much. We'll see you soon, and enjoy the rest of the service. God bless you all. Bye-bye.
Today, I'm so grateful for Pastor Sean and just the way that he has supported me and encouraged me in ministry, and I'm really excited to get to preach and to worship with all of you today. I will say the Tennessee allergies are getting the best of me this week, so you'll have to bear with me, and we'll just hope that my voice lasts through this sermon. So if you want to turn in your Bibles or on your phones to follow along with me, we are going to be in the Gospel of John, chapter 15, verses 9 through 17 this morning. But before I read our scripture for this morning, I think it would be helpful to give a little bit of context. So this chapter in John is right in the middle of a section in his gospel that a lot of scholars refer to as the final discourse. And this is a section that contains all of Jesus' last conversations and teachings with his disciples. So as the end of his earthly ministry of healing and performing miracles is starting to wind down, Jesus is entering into this final leg of his journey towards the cross, where he is going to be crucified in just a few chapters. So often when we find ourselves in these seasons of major life transition where everything is about to change, we have this sense of urgency to say the things that matter the most. So maybe you're a parent who has experienced dropping your child off for their first day of kindergarten. And just as they're about to hop out of the car and go inside, you just have this urgency to remind them of every life lesson that you can think of. You want to tell them how to make friends and how to mind their manners and how to not put crayons in their mouth. And you just want to make sure that they know everything that they need to know to be able to flourish and have a good first day when you're not going to be there with them. And maybe you have had a close friend or a family member move away to a new city. My husband, Riley, and I hosted a going-away party for one of our close friends this week. She actually just graduated from Trevecca yesterday, and she's moving back home to get married. And when we're in this season of things about to change, we have this sense of urgency to say all of the things that we really mean. We want to tell her how much she means to us and how much we're going to miss her. because when she's far away from us and we're not face to face, we want her to have this assurance of our love and our appreciation for her. And I think that it might have been similar for Jesus in this passage today. He knows, even if his disciples don't know yet, that his death is drawing near and his time with them is short. So in his final discourse, these last conversations, he's not using obscure, confusing parables, and he's not performing signs and wonders to teach his disciples. He is speaking very clearly and very plainly because he wants them to have an understanding of his love that they can carry with them even when he is no longer with them in the flesh. So with all of this in mind, let's hear the word of the Lord together from John chapter 15. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends, for everything that I have learned from my Father, I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit, fruit that will last, and so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. This is my command: love each other. It's John chapter 15, verses 9 through 17. So basically, Jesus has just summarized the entire dynamic of God's love in 9 verses. Jesus is using simple language to make things abundantly clear. As we see in the last few verses, he's trying to break down any barriers or power structures that would keep his listeners from having full access to the knowledge of God. God is not hiding from anyone. Jesus, in flesh and blood, is the full revelation of exactly who God is. And he shows us how to love and how to be loved. Jesus' summary of God's transforming love in these few verses here is a beautiful gift of revelation, and also a little bit daunting to try to cover in just one sermon, but I'll do my best. So Jesus describes the love of God in 3 pieces here. Before anything else, the first call of Jesus is remain in my love. We are invited to remain, to dwell in the love of God. And this is where it all begins before we even know it. God is pursuing us and inviting us into relationship with him. And in our Nazarene Wesleyan tradition, we have a fancy term called prevenient grace to describe this grace of God that goes before and invites us to dwell and to abide and to receive love before anything else. Second, Jesus offers a conditional statement, and he says, if you keep my commands, you will remain in my love. So Jesus shows in these 2 statements that dwelling in the love of God and obeying the commands of God are tangled up with each other. The love of God doesn't just leave us as it found us. The love of God transforms the desires of our hearts. The more that we dwell with God, the more that our will starts to look like the will of God. Whenever we receive the love of God over and over again, obedience to the commands of God becomes a natural response. We don't just obey the commands of God in order to earn the love of God. The love of God is always prevenient. It always comes first, before we can do a single thing to earn or deserve it. Another fancy word that we Nazarenes use to describe this is sanctification. So when we say this, we mean that when the love of God fills our hearts, sin gets pushed out, and we become more and more like Christ. Our obedience to God's commands is the fruit of the Spirit's work sanctifying us. The third piece of this dynamic is when Jesus gives his ultimate command to love each other. And again, he repeats, love each other, as if to emphasize there is no other aim of the love of God than for love to be extended. We don't dwell in the love of God and obey the commands of God just for our own sake. We don't receive the love of God to make our lives easier or to make us prosperous. We don't follow the rules to earn God's love or work our way into heaven. We abide and we obey so that we might extend the love of God to our neighbors. And this love is not cheap, generic Valentine's Day love. Jesus says to love as he loved, with our entire beings, with all of our lives, even to the point of death. Jesus' love is relentless, humble, and unafraid. His love is never concerned with self-preservation or personal gain. His love goes where no one else wants to go. It talks to the outcast. It puts his reputation at risk. It gets him arrested and hung on a cross, where even there, as he is breathing his last breath, he keeps on extending love to sinners. His love knows no end, and as recipients of his love, we are transformed and empowered, and in fact, commanded to do whatever it takes to give others access to this love as well. So I said before that Jesus summarizes the love of God in just a few verses here, but we also have the entire canon or collection of Scripture to help enrich and inform our understanding of Jesus' words here. So if you've spent much time in the church, you probably are familiar with the story of creation. When God created the heavens and the earth, he planted a garden. This garden was intentionally crafted with great care and detail. Everything was set in its place so that life may flourish. A space of beauty and peace was formed for the first humans and all the animals and creatures to dwell together in the love of God. This has always been God's hope for humanity and for all of creation, that we might remain in our Creator's love and in perfect right relationship with one another. Humans were invited to walk with God and to participate in tending to creation, to be fruitful and multiply and extend the love of God even beyond themselves. And God gave Adam and Eve only one restrictive command, to not eat from one tree in the garden. And this command wasn't given just as an opportunity for Adam and Eve to prove their obedience and earn more of God's love, because they already had the love of God in its fullness. This command was given as an opportunity for them to love God in return and to participate in relationship. Unfortunately, we know all too well that the first humans didn't keep this command. And because they didn't obey the command of God, they were unable to remain in this perfect, unobstructed love of God as they had experienced it in the garden. There was a rupture in relationship between God and humanity, and this breach in relationship is what we call sin. It creates distance between us and God so that it becomes a lot more difficult to dwell in perfect relationship together. But the good news is the love of God did not stop pursuing humanity after the fall in the garden. Time and time again throughout the Old Testament, God continues to make covenant with the people of God, with Israel, to give them an opportunity to dwell with him again. And each time that Israel falls short of keeping their end of the deal, God is faithful to uphold his end. And eventually, God offers the law as a gift to the Israelites, as a tool for them to live in right relationship with God, so that they might be able to remain in his love. However, over and over again, Israel keeps forgetting one crucial piece of the dynamic of God's love: to love each other as God has loved you. God didn't give them the law to shame each other into following the rules. They weren't given the law to become self-righteous and proud of their own obedience. They weren't given the law to get tangled up in arguments over its meaning. They were given the law so that they might remain in God's love and be transformed into God's witnesses in all the world. Israel never quite understood that they were only ever blessed so that they could be a blessing to the nations. They weren't blessed for their own sake. They were blessed to be a blessing. God called prophet after prophet to give Israel the stinging reminder: you're missing the point. You are not extending the love of God to your neighbors. You are hoarding it for yourselves, and it's getting suffocated in your midst. When the people of God continued to fall short, God chose to come dwell with us on earth. God was humble enough to be birthed into this broken creation by a teenage girl from a town that the wealthy and powerful would scoff at. The same God of creation and covenant became entirely vulnerable so that we might see in flesh and blood exactly what the love of God looks like. Jesus extended this love to humanity around dinner tables and at the city gates and on hilltops and around drinking wells. Everywhere he went, he made room for people in all places to dwell in the love of God. And through it all, Jesus remained in the love of his Father, so that Jesus' will was aligned with the will of the Father, making him obedient to the commands of God, even to the point of his own death. And out of his obedient body, hanging on the cross, flowed the fluids of life, blood and water. God broke open so that we might have a place to enter into the dynamic of God's love and have eternal life that we spend remaining, obeying, and extending the love of God to the world. And this same dynamic of love is the way that we pattern our lives as the church today. So we gather in spaces like this on Sunday mornings to worship together and to receive and abide in the love of God. And then we practice discipleship. So whether that's through Sunday school or small groups or youth group, we have these practices set in place that empower us and hold us accountable to walk in the commands of God. And hopefully, if we are really living into this dynamic of God's love that Jesus describes, all of this will lead us to extend the love of God to others far beyond the walls of this church in every moment of our ordinary lives. My husband, Riley, and I help lead a small group at Tribeca Community Church that we call a community on mission. So every other Wednesday night, we gather with a group of about 8 young adults, and we take turns hosting each other in our different homes, and we practice dwelling with God with one another. We pray together, we tell each other about how life has been good and about how it's been hard. We urge each other on towards greater obedience of God's commands. And we admit that we need God's grace and we need each other. But these evenings in the comfort of our different homes are meant to do a lot more than just check discipleship off of our to-do list for the week. They are meant to push us outward to extend this community of love throughout our neighborhood. So if you're familiar with Tribeca's campus, if you turn left out of the campus onto Murfreesboro Pike and just go 2 blocks up the road, you will find the J.C. Napier Government Housing neighborhood. The people of Napier are characterized by their resilience and their creativity. These neighbors understand what it means to welcome each other into their homes and share a steadfast love that goes a lot deeper than blood. But this neighborhood is also hard-pressed under the weight of poverty and injustice and broken systems that perpetuate violence and crime. Our community on mission has felt that this is exactly the kind of place that Jesus might be spending his time. Jesus might be entering into a space like this, sharing meals and telling stories and making room for people to dwell in the presence of God together. So, on every other Wednesday for the past year, we have partnered with Harvest Hands, a nonprofit community center in Napier, to have dinner and play games and build relationship with high school students living in Napier. And we are reminded every day that God has been at work making all things new in Napier long before we ever showed up there. Napier houses many people of great faith and hearts intent on justice. We are not the ones bringing Jesus into the neighborhood. He has already been there all along. Perhaps you could say that our role is simply to help them name the God who is already in their midst. Now, I'll be honest, there are days when we are really discouraged. We still have students with incarcerated parents. We still have kids getting in trouble at school. We still have high schoolers who are responsible for providing for their entire family financially. There are still a lot of things that are not as they should be, and there is a lot of brokenness that has not been mended yet. And while some days I want to just throw up my hands and say, if everyone could just obey the commands of God, all of this would be better, I'm reminded of the way that the dynamic of God's love begins. It's not with a list of rules or qualifications or expectations. It begins with an invitation to remain in love. The truth is, if these kids, or any of us for that matter, don't have the love of God, we will have nothing to sustain us in our efforts to obey the commands of God. And so our group of 8 young adults has resolved to simply make room for these high schoolers to encounter the love of God. We try to break down any barriers or power structures that would keep us distant from each other so that we can see each other as friends. And as we eat and laugh and play together, we are daily surprised by the grace of God at work in our midst, shaping our hearts and making us more like Christ. And I trust that the more we dwell with God together, the more obedience to the commands of God will become second nature for us. And I can't wait to see all of the people that these kids go on to love because they have first received the love of God. So I don't know where you find yourself in relation to this dynamic of God's love today. Perhaps this is all new to you and you haven't even dared to receive this love for yourself for the first time. Or perhaps you have walked with Christ for years and years, and somewhere along the way you became convinced that God only loved you because you followed the rules. Maybe you have become focused on earning your own salvation in this way that you have forgotten the ultimate command of Jesus to love others. Or maybe you have dedicated your life to a helping profession as a counselor or a teacher or a nurse where you are daily loving others, but you have forgotten to dwell and to receive the love of God for yourself, and so you're feeling weary and burnt out. So again, I don't know where you find yourself today, but I know that the simple truth of the gospel remains the same for all people in all places. You are invited to remain in the love of your Creator. This love will transform the desires of your heart so that obedience to God becomes the natural rhythm of your everyday life. And when you truly walk in the goodness of God, you ought to find that you can't help but share this love with the world, no matter how broken or dangerous or ridiculous it may seem. So if you have any desire to participate in this dynamic of God's love, perhaps the best place I know to begin is at the communion table. Just as Jesus did for his disciples just before he died, so are we invited to the table today to receive the love of God that poured out of Jesus' broken body and shed blood for our sake. We are invited to this table to receive and to remain in the love of God. But I should say, we don't believe that Jesus gave us the practice of communion just as an empty gesture. We believe that when we receive this bread and take this cup, the grace of God is actually at work to transform the desires of our hearts. The love of God doesn't leave us at the table as it found us. We believe that this practice is a means of grace, making us more like Christ. And when we become more like Christ, the only real way to live is to take this love we have received with us far beyond the walls of this beautiful sanctuary.
To glorious God.